Well, welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight to Council's Planning and Consultation Committee meeting, and would like to advise the meeting will be live streamed and recorded. The live stream and video recording will be made publicly available via YouTube and on Council's website. Nillumbik Shire Council acknowledges that we are on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung, always was, always will be. This land was never ceded and its history never told, and that is changing, and we are part of that change. As all councillors are present for the meeting, there are no apologies, so we will move on now to conflicts of interest. Committee members should note that any conflicts of interest should be disclosed before the relevant item. I'll ask now, are there any conflicts of interest in tonight's agenda? No. We will now move on to confirmation of minutes, and I am looking for a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes. To move by Mayor Eyre, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Egan.
I will read the motion out
Please
as well.
do.
Thank you. That the committee, acting under delegation from Council, confirms the minutes of the Planning and Consultation Committee meeting held on Tuesday, 14th of June 2022, which is in attachment 1.
And we have the motion seconded by Councillor Egan. I'll now put this motion to a vote. All in favour? And that motion is carried unanimously. We move on to the officers' reports. The next report tonight is the Draft Arts and Culture Strategy 2022 to 2026, and we have one speaker for this report, Barry Pearce. Barry, are you in the chamber? Great. Please make your way to the table in the centre of the room. You can switch on your microphone. Perfect. Now you can sit, you can stand.
I'm happy standing if that's all right.
Oh, well, absolutely.
Am I able to still wear a mask?
I think you can remove the mask for the purposes of speaking,
Thank you.
if you so wish. And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity. And likewise, I pay respects to the Wurundjeri. I'm Barry Pearce, an architect in Eltham. Have been for quite a long while. To do this tonight in support of the arts policy, I would like to introduce a project which runs parallel and would be within that framework. And so I'm hoping that because we're finalising that policy, that it would be useful for councillors to know of this project that's running concurrently. I'd hoped that by the time we came to council, we would have many community groups supporting the idea, or at least having commented on the idea. But tonight we're well advanced with that, but we are not quite as ready as we would like to have been. So I'm an architect and designer. One of the things I do as a designer is I design for theatre. In theatre, the designer often, certainly in my case, takes the initiative in the first instance. There is a script to guide, but the designer has the opportunity to do something completely different, something that follows quite literally or in between. And that drives the project and the director and everybody with what follows. So in this particular case, we have tried to do the same thing with respect. So the idea is that the script has been written for 20 years or so. The script is for a gallery in Nillumbik. And there seems to be many voices. So my wish was to try and collect those ideas of what the arts need and so on, and see if we couldn't actually produce a building which was humble, which served the purpose, which had a little bit of civic identity, and which served the purposes of all of the community groups that have an interest in such a project. And that we have done. So we have a project. May I hand these?
Well,
out?
your time is out,
Yes.
and I believe you can hand them to the councillors, but we do have question time, so I'm sure councillors may have questions about the building and the design. So I think that's okay to receive the plans for the building. And while you're officially over your 3 minutes, now is question time from the councillors. So I guess
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I would open it
Chair.
up to councillors to ask Barry any questions they may have. Yes, Mayor Eyre.
Thank you. Thanks, Barry, for coming in.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not sure. You please sit down if you want. I just wanted to ask, I think you ran out of time, so I'm not quite sure how much more detail you would have gone into, but you talked about a gallery in Nillumbik. Do you have an idea where that is or what that might look a bit like? I know we've got this, but...
Yes, thank you. The proposal was for the site in Main Road adjacent the library, and which has had a nasty scar on it for 20 years, which needs healing. I think there are several ways of doing that, and this was my idea for at least one of those, which I felt was in keeping with what is now quite a mature and I think detailed notion amongst the community of what the Eltham Gateway can contain or should contain or might do. So it's for the site that the council owns in Main Road. Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying.
Any other councillors? Yes, indeed. I'll go Richard first. Sorry, Councillor Stockman first, and then Councillor Duffy.
Hi, and great design here. It looks fantastic what you've done here. Obviously, you are a professional architect. My question is you mentioned a gallery in Nillumbik. If it wasn't to go on this particular site, would you be happy to use some of your work for another site in Nillumbik?
If there is one, councillor, I'd be delighted, but I'd like to make it clear that I am retiring. So the work I have done has been voluntary. It's quite a lot of hours, and producing books is not cheap, but so I have no particular claim on it. It's really not my idea. It's an idea that's been in the community for 20 years. But it is my, I guess, building form. But it's free to be used.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Barry, and thank you for bringing this along to give us a visual. It certainly helps. You mentioned that with the project, that there were many community voices that were part of this. I'm just wondering if you might be able to share with us who else you've spoken to that's supporting this, whether they're individuals or community groups.
Thank you. It is quite a long list, so I could just go through it very quickly. The people who I have spoken with are the Rotary Club of Eltham. They, tonight at their meeting, will be changing presidents, so they can't do anything unless it goes through the board. So I don't have anything formal from them, but they are proposing a meeting in 2 weeks with me and at least 5 or 6 of them. The Eltham District Historical Society, I've spoken to Jim Connor and Russell Yeoman. They're fairly settled for their accommodation in the Historical Society, but he did, of course, Jim did have some comments about the universal access that linked the gallery to the library. So that's the aim of the exercise, has been to get that feedback and put it into the system. So I refined the 1 in 20 gradient between the two. The Eltham Community Action Group have suggested they will have a meeting with me in 2 weeks' time. Carlotta at the moment is down with COVID. Nillumbik Tourism and Business, and they have given us a short response in writing, very supportive. The Nillumbik Artist Open Studios have given us a response in writing, very supportive. The Warren Jury, I have spent 4 hours with a Sydney group and a Melbourne group, but it hasn't really been formalised with respect to this particular building yet, but that's seen as a very high priority. Di Bullen and Victorian Artist Supplies are a nerve centre for artists, so she has also given a letter of strong support. The Friends of Nillumbik, I've spoken with Greg Johnson. The 2 councillors that have seen this in part would be Councillor Karen Egan and Councillor Jeffrey Payne. I think they're the only 2. The aim was to try and get the support quite well documented before we came to council. The Mud Brick Association, Robin Bleam, the local engineer in Eltham, is the president, and he has put something in writing in support. Gail Blackwood in the real estate has been very supportive. Peter Wegner, who was this year's Archibald winner and citizen of Nillumbik, is 200% behind the idea. So there's a number of written responses which I'm happy to read out, but they are very supportive, the ones I have so far.
Oh, that's great. Maybe we could get a copy of that.
Maybe we could get a copy, a presentation, so to speak. As chair, I can't ask any questions, so I guess I'm looking around to see if there's any councillors with any other questions they may have. Yeah.
Thank you. Barry, thank you for volunteering your time with this too. You mentioned that you've done the drawings. I'm curious to find out, like, if you were to charge for this, what sort of price would that be for the work that you've put into coming up with this design?
Well, that can all go to the building of the gallery. I mean, I don't know. The out-of-pocket expenses are all I'm interested in. You could expect quite a few percent, 8% for an architect's fees on $30 million, but that would be all the way through. I'm offering what I've done, and I must say in the presentation, if I may, I've had to cut corners, so the presentation is highly coloured, for example, and that is just an easy way to do it, and it attracts attention and whatever, but the colour scheme in the actual building I've proposed to use, I won't go on, but just to use the colours that come from the red box gum leaves, which fall on the ground and turn from a blue-green to a magenta-y pink as they decay. And it's that range of colours that I'm hoping to use, but of course there is also a Wurundjeri theme that runs from the pointy entrances through the whole of the gallery in the centre of the ceiling, and that needs to be discussed at great, much more detail too.
Cool, I'm particularly interested in that. I don't know if tonight's the right night, but I'd really like to hear about the Wurundjeri themes that you've got in this. So I'll leave that to the chair.
Thank you. Look, I wish we could do justice to this presentation. There's many questions I would like to ask. Oh, wait a minute. Yes?
Just very quickly, and it's sort of a slight... Sorry. I forgot I haven't got a voice properly still. Yes, I'm still as excited as when I first saw this, so well done, Barry. This was one of the things that when I first got on council was sort of in my wish list of what we can do, and I don't think there's any councillor who would disagree with me in that everybody in Nillumbik wants a gallery. The concern that we had last time it was raised was where, and that's where the controversy came from. So we had a Montsalvat group, we had that site group, and then we had other sites groups. So there were still a few people connected with the Montsalvat sort of crowd, for want of a better word. Have you managed to get any of those on board as to this?
No, I haven't, and I apologise for that, but
That's all right.
there hasn't been enough time quite yet. Montsalvat does seem to have faded for a lot of the locals. It used to be open early and lunch in the breakfast with the kookaburras, and that seems to have been cut back a bit, and it does seem to have lost a lot of the, with the local community that I know, Montsalvat seems to have lost a lot of the connections. And I know the council does use that gallery, but this would also save those fees, and it would save maybe 30,000 storage fees a year, over 10 years, 300 grand, something of the sort.
Not to mention provide workshop spaces and other community group opportunities. The other question I had was around funding. Obviously we've missed the federal election, which is where a lot of the art galleries are funded through, as well as philanthropic donations. Where do you see us? I mean, you're probably pretty aware that Nillumbik's pretty broke, so obviously we've got to get funding from somewhere else. I mean, I know a few artists in the area, but none of them that would have a spare 30 million up their sleeve. Harold Mitchell's got a few, but he's about the only multimillionaire I know around here. So any suggestions of where we could get funding?
I think the short answer, and probably the honest one, is no. But my estimates, of course, that I did very roughly, because we don't know whether the current scheme that you've got is a final one that we could present to council and discuss. But it would be under 30 million, which would be the equivalent if there are 70,000 people in the Shire, something like $480 per person. So families would not be able to cope. But my feeling is, first of all, there is no point in talking about money until we have a scheme that we collectively have agreed upon. And we will never get the money unless we are collectively agreed upon a thing. So that's been the aim. And if 5 million came from feds and 5 million came from Victorian State through one of their grants, that's optimistic perhaps, but that gets the 480 down to 280. And it does seem to me that not exactly crowdfunding, but if we're talking about those kinds of figures, it doesn't seem to be totally out of the question, if we are all determined that this is something we want to do.
Just one final point to do with the funding. You're aware that the Shepparton Art Gallery was around 54 million, so something like 80% of that was all philanthropic donations. It was only the rest that was, there's a tiny bit of council money, but the rest was fed. So it didn't come out of council coffers. It was mainly from fellow artists and donations. So there's no question in that. I'm just making you aware that's where it came from.
Thank you. There's another in up in the hills in Melbourne, up in the Eastern Hills, and no, sorry, a community building, starts with G. Well, the one I'm thinking of I'll think of the name in a moment, did get about 1.2 million from the federal government. It was a $7.5 million project, community centre. The bank gave a bit, Philanthropic gave a bit, and they had a lot of working bees and things that made the money. I could get more details of that, it's all on the web. So it does seem to me that if we were really determined, if it turned out to be that we're really determined to do this, there are much better people than I for hunting out where it can come from. But it does seem to me that it is, I mean, 30 million to me is a lot of money. 20 million is still a lot of money, but collectively, with a bit of help from some major contributors and whatever, I suspect that it is not totally out of the question. It's not as if that says, forget it.
Barry, thank you for this, for the work you put in already, and for putting this on our radar well and truly. I don't know if it's something that has to happen every council that comes along, but thank you for this, for all the work and the ongoing work that you're doing with the community to make this a vision real.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess
Sure.
we'll move on now with the actual motion itself. Do I have a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Duffy.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation PCC 024-2022 draft arts and culture strategy for the current year 2022 to 2026. That the committee acting under delegation from council firstly acknowledges and notes the submissions received from the community and organisations who provided feedback on the draft strategy, which is listed as attachment 3 in the papers. Secondly, resolves that the confidential unredacted public submissions on the draft strategy, which is attachment 4, remains confidential in accordance with the section of the Local Government Act as stated. Point 3, acknowledges any presentations to the committee, and thank you, Barry, for what you've said tonight. Point 4, that we consider the matters contained in the submissions and this report during the finalisation of the draft strategy. Point 5, requests a further report be presented at the September council meeting to adopt the final version of the arts and culture strategy document for the next 4 years. And point 6, thanks the submitters for providing council with feedback on this important document.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Perkins. Councillor Duffy, would you like to speak?
Yeah, thank you. Just to say that this report, well, the arts and culture strategy for our council, for our community, is something that's very important. This process has been ongoing for quite some time. So the community was first engaged last year. Feedback was gathered, a report was put together, which was, a collection of what we know. And then this strategy document has fallen out through lots of community consultation, and actually in one of the submissions there was an acknowledgement of that and words of appreciation to say thank you for giving the community the chance to be involved. The 4-year strategic commitment is important, and there are 4 goals in the strategy, and they can be read when people look through the plan, but essentially it's about an interconnected and creative community, a visible and supported creative community, a diverse and resilient community, and a distinctive Nillumbik creative community. So, we've heard tonight from Barry about the importance of art, and a number of community groups and individuals who are very supportive of the idea of building an art gallery. In the location that he's talking about, you said it very well about, it's a scar that needs healing, and our community is looking at what does go there. It's been quite a controversial site for many years. But I remember seeing documentation of a council building, the plans for a council building that was to be built there quite a number of years ago, and it did contain an art gallery, and on the top of it, it was all covered in grass. So this is going back quite some time. So, you're not putting forward a new idea, but you're putting it forward in a very fresh way. And I really loved hearing the Wurundjeri considerations, and I'd look forward to hearing more about that, Barry. And I think in the document, arts and culture is not something that should be just in a document. We want to live and breathe it, and I think that's one of the really important things in this strategy is it talks about us prioritising arts, but it's really simple. It's saying in one of these points, if I find the right spot, I did have it written down, the main bit about, you know, living art every day. So I don't mean to waffle, I've lost my spot with my notes, but it was really making sure that we do live and breathe art every day, whether that's in performance, whether that's in reading. We've got lots of celebrated artists. One of our local artists, Vicky Conley, on the weekend at the State Library, had her children's picture book, Little Puggle song, converted into music and free performances, and it was the Victorian Orchestra that has made music to an art children's picture book that she's done. We have so much to celebrate when it comes to art in this community in so many different ways. So I think the thing for me, though, is I really like this statement from the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Corporation that is at the beginning of this strategy, and I'd encourage people to read that. It's on page 3, and you know, from the Wurundjeri point of view, they're saying art is intrinsic to Wurundjeri culture and heritage and cannot be separated into different art forms. It's embedded in all parts of Wurundjeri culture, and I think we can extrapolate from that too how important art is to all of us as individuals in storytelling. So, you know, I commend the community for getting involved in this, and council for having arts and culture as such a priority in what we do with council. And yes, $30 million does sound like a big number, but when Barry's broken it down to a per person figure, it does sound quite reasonable and achievable. I suppose it looks at, you know, will that kind of find a way into the arts and culture strategy? Because when I read through that at the moment, it doesn't actually say anything about us having an art gallery in this next 4 years of council. So there's lots to think about. So I would encourage people to, is there actually another, I'm just trying to go back and look at, is there another option for people to put forward any more information? Or are we just, yeah, so it looks like council is just gathering the information to put forward a final version for the September council meeting for us to consider at that point. So I think with that I might just leave it. I've kind of got myself all muddled with my dot points and my notes here, but essentially I think we can say that we love the arts.
Thank you. Councillor Duffy. Councillor Perkins, would you like to speak?
Oh, just very briefly, I think Councillor Duffy's pretty well said it all, but I couldn't help myself but fact check Councillor Egan's claims about the Shepparton Art Museum. And from the website it states the new building was funded by the Greater Shepparton City Council to the tune of 15.35 million. So over 15 million from council, 15 million from the federal government, 12.5 million from the Victorian State Government, and the smallest contribution, but still a significant amount, was from private and philanthropic and community support through the SAM Foundation. So there was still a very, very significant amount from the Shepparton City Council. And yeah, that's just all I wanted to add. You know, of course, you know, funding is one matter with a project of this size and scale, but it's also the resources to do the planning, to do all the work before the actual build. So it's a long and detailed community consultation process that would have to be undertaken. And to state that everybody in Nillumbik wants an art gallery, I think if it comes down to the prospect of $400 per person, every man, woman and child in Nillumbik potentially contributing $400, I don't think we'd end up with everybody wanting it. So, you know, the funding is the biggest issue, but certainly if we look at Shepparton as an example, we can't dream of not having to find significant amounts of money from council. That's all I wanted to add, and happy to support the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Perkins. Any other councillor would like to speak at this point? Yes, Councillor Regan.
Yeah, just to clarify a few points that Councillor Perkins has raised. I mean, $54 million is nearly double what Barry's proposing here in this submission. So if you were then to extrapolate that down, their 15 million will be 7.5 roughly. I'm just guesstimating, but it still was, the majority came from philanthropic donations, and I don't think Barry was suggesting in any way that every person in Nillumbik's going to put their hand up for $480. He was just working at that out from a maths point of view, just to give us an idea of what each person comparatively would be paying. Shepparton's got a far greater population than we have in humble little Nillumbik. Anyway, we'll see where it goes from here. It's been in the art strategy, Councillor Duffy, since I got on council. It's really only this council where it started to fade off into the never. So perhaps we can bring that back. Thank you.
Any other councillors like to speak? Mayor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to acknowledge that Nillumbik is known for its arts and its artistic community, and without a document such as this, we can't continue to support our artists and the very core of what Nillumbik stands for. So I think it's a great document, and thank you to everyone who provided feedback.
Thank you, Mayor Eyre. Any other councillors hoping to speak?
Just a right of reply
A
before
right of reply?
we wrap up, if there's no one else. that wants
Has
to
anyone
speak.
opposed the motion, though?
I was just wanting to make a comment about what Councillor
Point
Perkins
of order,
said
there's
to-
no right of reply if no one's spoken
Yeah, I
against the
don't think
motion.
Okay.
anyone's spoken against the motion. I think we're all, no one's spoken against it, so I don't think right of reply
Okay.
works.
Oh, it was just an assertion that was made.
Probably, but I guess we'll have to go for the vote anyway and keep moving, if that's okay. So now I'd like to put the motion to a vote. All in favour of the motion? And that motion is carried unanimously. We're now going to move on to the next report tonight, which is the Draft Access, Equity and Inclusion Policy. We did have a speaker listed for this, Navina Spirovska from the Victorian Pride Lobby, who does not appear to be in the chamber. So on that basis, I'm going to keep moving down and ask for a mover for the recommendation. Councillor Ramcharan.
Yes, I'd like to acknowledge that the committee acting under delegation from Council 1 acknowledges and notes the submissions received on the draft policy, attachment 2, and the draft Access, Equity and Inclusion Policy Engagement Summary Report in attachment 4 for the draft Access, Equity and Inclusion Policy. 2. Resolves that the confidential, unredacted public submissions on the draft policy in attachment 3 remains confidential in accordance with section 3(1)(f) of the Local Government Act 2020. 3. Acknowledges any presentations to the committee. 4. Considers the matters contained in the submissions and this report during finalisation of the Access, Equity and Inclusion Policy. 5. Requests a further report to be presented at the 26th of July 2022 Council meeting to adopt the final version of the Access, Equity and Inclusion Policy. 6. Thanks the submitters for providing Council with feedback on this important document. And 7. Notes the draft updated policy in attachment 5 that will be presented to Council for adoption at the Council meeting scheduled for the 26th of July 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Ramcharan. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Perkins. Councillor Ramcharan, would you like to speak?
Yes, look, I'm really proud that Council's doing this work to make sure that we can make everybody in our community feel included and make Council programs accessible to everyone. I'm really proud of how our officers have actually managed to consult with a broad range of the community. It's not always easy to consult with diverse groups, and it's really important to reach out specifically to groups who are underrepresented to make sure that we hear from everyone, especially when we're putting together a policy like this one that is entirely about supporting those groups. So I think officers have done a really good job of that. It's not an easy task. I don't think we captured everything, but we certainly did a really good job of it, I think. And the feedback's been really useful. And it's also been really good to see how much of that feedback was actually taken on board and implemented into the newer draft of the policy. So that was really pleasing to see. Thank you to everybody in the community who gave feedback. It's been really valuable. And I really hope that we can move forwards with this policy and actually make some really positive change in people's lives. I think the way that the council treats the community and different demographics within our community is incredibly important. And by changing the way we do things as a council, we can really show the way to end all sorts of discrimination in the community. We can be a leader, and we can show people that you're welcome. Everybody is welcome here in Nillumbik, That's what this policy is about, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the results once we've formally endorsed it. And thank you again to officers and to everyone who gave feedback.
Thank you, Councillor Amtran. Councillor Perkins, would you like to speak? No? Any other councillors like to speak to this motion? Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to just note, just on page 5, on the purpose, it mentions apply a lens over all council services. And I think this is really important to note, that that's in effect saying that this becomes business as usual, that the things that are a part of this policy becomes business as usual for council officers, and I think that's really important, that it's not something that happens on the side, it's something that's embedded across the organisation, and that's all I really needed to say. But it's a great document and I'm really proud to have this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Eyre. Any other councillors happy to speak? Yes, Councillor Duffy.
Hi, I'd just like to say very quickly that it is important and it's a very important policy, and what's going to make the difference is with if this policy becomes a policy that's just shelved and then we adopt, versus if it's a policy that we live and breathe and people feel the difference. So as Councillor Ramtran said, people feel welcome. It's not just about feeling welcome. This is about being able to feel that you live and belong, and that your needs are being met. So I'm not going to feel ostracised if I'm a member of the priority groups that have been listed. So I just would like to say that as a policy, it's great that we've got it. I'm proud that we've got it. I just want to see that this is become something that right across the Shire, not just council, but all organisations and all people that are living in our Shire take to heart, because it's at the essence of being a person, being able to feel that you're valued in life. So whether that's being able to get out of a car and into a wheelchair and up a footpath easily, or whether that's being a woman and feeling that you have the same opportunities as men, or whether it's you're a young person that's discovering your sexuality and you're wanting to feel included and not left out. I think that's the important part. Policies, having them is great, but it's the making it personal and having people feeling that it's applying to them that's important. So that's the task at hand for us. Adopting a policy is easy. Living the policy is the hard bit. So that's the bit that I'd like to see council really commit to.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Now the councillors like to speak. In that case, I will put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? And that motion is carried unanimously. The next report tonight is the intention to lease land to LMS Energy Proprietary Limited for a solar farm, and we don't have any speakers for this report, so I'm now looking for a mover for the recommendation. Councillor Stockman.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to move the motion that Council accepts or the Council adopts the recommendation by the officers as per the papers.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Ramcharan. Councillor Stockman, would you like to speak to this?
I'd just like to say I think this is fantastic, and our Director of Infrastructure and the team there have done a great job in collaborating. It's a lot that goes into this lease, and I think it's a fantastic job. And I'd just like to point out that LMS have committed to a collaborative approach with Council during the contract term to implement value-added benefits, innovation, improved technology and future opportunities. And the items currently being explored include future potential for battery storage, preferential discounted rates for EV charging facilities for the community, council employees and council's fleet of light and heavy vehicles, and potential for passive educational and recreational facilities to be safely co-located and developed alongside the solar farm.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman. Councillor Ramcharan, would you like to speak?
Yes, look, this brings us one step closer to a really exciting project that's going to help move us towards that net zero target. It is a rather large step in the right direction, but it is only a first step. There's a heck of a lot more we need to do to bring council's emissions to net zero and also the communities. But this is important. This is a really important motion, and it's going to be an important day when we can actually get that solar farm up off the ground. This really has just been a mandatory process of consulting with the community before entering the lease, and it's been good to see the feedback from the community. We've certainly got people who are really looking closely at the way council manages our assets and our finances, and that's important because we need people to be keeping an eye on us in that respect. There have been questions about why we're only charging $2,000 a year, which seems incredibly low when you look at what some people have to spend to get a one-bedroom apartment. But the reason for that is partially because the land's an old landfill. It can't really be used for very much, so it's not incredibly valuable. But also because this is a power purchase agreement. Council's getting cheap power, cheap, clean power from LMS Energy as part of this solar farm. And that's where the benefit is to us and to the community. And that's what this project's about. So the $200 a year for the actual lease, while that seems very low, it's part of a much broader picture. Thank you, Councillor Egan. 2,000, not 200,000. We'd be very pleased if it was 200,000 a year. The 2,000 a year plus GST for the lease is part of a much broader picture, so that needs to be taken into account, and that's why the value is as low as it is. Thank you.
Any other councillors wish to speak at this point? No, in that case I will put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? And that motion is also carried unanimously. I am told that when this solar farm is finished, briefly, Nillumbik will have the biggest solar farm on a previous landfill for a very short amount of time until LMS build another one in another shire. So briefly, that's something we can put in the Nillumbik news. All right, the next report tonight is the concept plan for the Eltham Gateway open space, and I just wanted to note that this item has been updated and consolidated into a single colour plan, and there is also an amended motion proposed to incorporate this update. We have 4 speakers who would like to speak to this, and the first is Dennis Johnson. I'll ask Dennis to make his way to the microphone, please. So Dennis, you're speaking twice, I believe, once as convener of the Southern Gateway Renewal Group and once personally. Which one's up first? Is it as part of the Renewal Group? Okay, well, you have 3 minutes. The microphone is yours. May want to drag the microphone closer to you, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to say the Southern Gateway Renewal Group is effectively what we've come to call ourselves a gang of 6. We are the remnants of the group that pushed back hard against the development of the roundabout, and but now we are strong supporters of the proposal which emanated from that pushback. Firstly, I'd like to record the group's thanks to Nillumbik for your dollar support for the project, as well as your commitment of officers' time and councillors' time to the progression of what we think is going to be a really important project. I'd also like to record the group's objectives for this concept, and they're quite simple: creating a sense of arrival at our home, reclaiming and revegetating the remnant areas on the roadsides, acknowledging the original owners of the land, and expressing the character and history of Nillumbik. The draft conceptual master plan that you have copies of is a product of a process which has been undertaken to prepare something that expresses those objectives. It's been a very rushed process, and one that has delivered one master plan idea. I note that the draft master plan for Area A in particular contains elements that are inconsistent with the objectives I just spoke about. The group I represent, we will use our voice through the consultation process to try to identify those items and simplify what we believe the concept can be. And despite these matters of disagreement, we remain very optimistic that the community's wishes can be represented in this concept, and we'll be encouraging the widest consultation we can achieve to see that happen. We are encouraging MRPV and Nillumbik to see this project as a demonstration project, one that is a first for MRPV, the state agency, and take these lessons from this project, which is engaged with the community to deliver something worthwhile, into other state government projects. So my time is just done. I'll wait until, well, if you wish me to continue as me.
Dennis, I believe that's what's going to happen. You will magically transform, not to be convener of the Southern Gateway Renewal Group, but yourself, Dennis Johnson. We can't, unfortunately, ask any questions of you right now because you appear on behalf of that group, but you have another 3 minutes and the microphone is all yours.
Thank you. So I'm the convener of the group and probably the principal person arguing against the previous proposal, or the proposal which is now built, which was based on my suggestions to produce something simpler and more in keeping. But the net result was we lost our gateway, our roundabout, and the treed approaches to it. I was individually surprised and delighted that MRPV accepted my challenge in the final group pushback meeting when I said, if you're really going to destroy our gateway, can you please help us create a new gateway? And surprised and delighted I am that MRPV have taken that challenge and come alongside Nillumbik and the community to try to do that. A personal thanks to the council officers who we've engaged with and contributed so far. In particular, Rowena, the project manager, who's been given a poison chalice to try to deliver something in a really tight time frame, with many strands to it. Not just Rowena, but the rest of the council officers have been terrific. I'd also encourage council to see this project as a long-term endeavour. Implementing the master plan when it's revised and agreed after consultation can be done over a number of years. There is no rush. There's a rush to get started and to spend some money that's been allocated, but it's more important to create something we'll all be proud of, proud to come home to. So let's take our time to get something really positive and well supported by the community. I'd also like to reinforce my view that the project needs to be seen as community-led, that it isn't seen as what MRPV decided we could have. That process resulted in a roundabout removal. We want this process to be seen as a community-led project delivering something the community wants. And finally, I'd like to reinforce, as you look at the master plan, that the emphasis we were hoping to see is one of regeneration of some remnant lands that are not in good condition, and revegetation of those sites, creating passive spaces. I'm happy to take questions, Jeff.
Your timing is perfect. We're at the point now where councillors can ask questions of the submitter. Are there any questions from any of the councillors? Okay, I'm going to go with Councillor Duffy first and then Councillor Perkins.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dennis, for all your work on this project. On behalf of all the community and those who have no idea what's going on, there's been lots of hours, and I remember myself being involved in some early meetings in the CBD with MRVP. When you mentioned this is the gateway, it's the coming home, it's also the drive-through on the way home for many people that live in Diamond Creek, Plenty, Doreen. So how do you want people to feel when they're using it as a gateway to Nillumbik, and it's kind of a pass-through for on their way home. So Eltham is not home for them, but there's this sense of arrival in coming through the gateway. So I'm kind of keen to hear how you would want to see this project make those people feel, because they're not going to be getting out of their car to stop and walk through this area. They might come back and do that. What's the feeling that you're hoping to achieve for those people?
Yes, a couple of things. This area and this gateway concept should create a visual transition, if you like, from an urban, hard-edged bitumen and concrete area to something completely different. We are entering, as you come through this area, this is different. This is entering a place that has a treed character, and use of trees in this gateway can do that, and the master plan is attempting in its first round to do that. The other thing that I'd like this gateway to achieve is a sense that because this is different and treed, it's a slower paced area. If you're driving into this gateway, you get a visual signal that says, slow down, this is a different place.
Thank you. Councillor Perkins.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. Look, this point might come out in community consultation, but just when I look at the plan, I look at a large area that looks to be not landscaped at all, and talks about it being forest and parking area. And I just wonder your view on whether or not that area could be improved as well.
Can you point to it as I can? That area there is the currently leased area to the flower cellar, and that lease exists and is up for renewal soon-ish, so we don't have power to change that unless it became, unless the lease was dropped and it became available.
Well, what about if the lease continued, but with the agreement of the leasee?
That's a possibility.
Because I think the florist would be very invested, I would have thought, in improving
we have had
their site as well.
Members of our group have had discussions with the flower seller, and they are generally supportive of anything that makes their environment more attractive for people to stop and come in. But that is focused on the parts on either side of their leased site.
Mm.
They do need to maintain parking for the purpose of their business. So we have not attempted. It may come back in the consultation process that the flower seller comes back with some ideas.
Yeah, I just, the example of the MCG, which is surrounded by open space and gardens, which is occasionally used as car parking. I can't help but think, there are solutions in terms of having a car park that is also a green car park.
Yes.
those hatched concrete things or whatever, so it's sort of half and half. But I should be asking a question, but I just see it as a missed opportunity if
Yes.
that
Look,
that is continues as well.
at the risk of taking 1 minute more, the resident in the house, the Ferguson family that reside in the house that's right on the corner next to the flower cellar, they were utilising a section of parkland to get out of their property rather than getting onto Main Road because of the difficulties. We were able, through consulting with them and through back to MRPV, to have a little of the bitumen that was left over perhaps from the roundabout replacement to build them a new driveway and therefore free up some area that they'd been using informally as a driveway, which will be used for landscaping now.
Just one further quick question, Dennis. Do you know what the history of that site was? Did that have has it always had a retail use?
Look, I'm not the right person to go into that
Jim
history.
might be able to advise you. Jim, can you provide some advice?
I'm speaking up.
Oh, good. Okay. Yep. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Yes, Councillor Antran.
Yeah, thank you. Just briefly, and Dennis, I'm sure you'll touch on this in your submissions, so I don't need you to go into too much detail, but you mentioned before that there are certain aspects that you think could be changed or simplified. I was just wondering if you could give a brief list. As I say, no need to go into detail because
Yeah,
I know
sure.
you'll put that in your submission.
Sure. There's a couple of things. One is there's a fence shown along the main road side of Site A. We think it's probably better if the fence is near the river so that we don't lose any young Elthamites down the bank of the river, and that would be a better way to spend fencing dollars. The other is the creation of a spiral with an indigenous edible garden. It seems like a lot of money to allocate to a hard-edged landscaping, and could be the concept of edible garden indigenousness perhaps should be spread right throughout the site rather than identified in a local area, which speaks to segregation again. So we'd prefer a more simple revegetation and perhaps the paths being simplified without that spiral. But there'll be opportunity for the community to give their view on that. Its origin is from our consultant, our landscape consultant.
Thank you.
Any other questions from any other councillors at this point? Thank you, Dennis. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Jim Connor, who is speaking on behalf of the Friends of Diamond Creek, Eltham Lower Park. Jim, I think you're pretty familiar with this whole process. You have 3 minutes.
Vaguely, I'm starting to learn about it.
Ah.
Thanks for the opportunity. I have been a member of the Friends of Diamond Creek, Eltham Lower Park for over 30 years, an active member. And I'm actually speaking on behalf of Sue Dyatt, as she was not able to attend tonight, wanted to but wasn't able to. So the Friends of the Diamond Creek in Eltham Lower Park started about 30 years ago. It now works along the lower reaches of the Diamond Creek, rehabilitating and restoring the Indigenous vegetation on the west bank, whilst encouraging others to do so on the east bank. The group was pleased when the opportunity arose for council to extend restoration work at the entrance into Eltham, especially after the removal of the roundabout, which formed a part of the gateway zone into Eltham. This area would, when revegetated, link the existing riparian vegetation in Eltham Lower Park with the work that has been undertaken by Council and Melbourne Water, with volunteers in enhancing remnant vegetation further north. The group with others lobbied Vicky Ward MP to initiate a survey into what the community wanted at a new entrance. Site Area A, adjacent to the Diamond Creek and the open drain running from Eltham Lower Park into Diamond Creek, was considered in comparisons to Site B and C to only need environmental restoration. There was a positive response to it remaining bushy, a space for wild to return and be protected, and some 22% said basically leave it alone, it's green. What is now being proposed for Site A goes against the community expectations and will sadly be an irreplaceable lost opportunity. The viewing platform, spiral and meeting place are human intrusions into the area that could and should be revegetated and left as a natural area to demonstrate how a weedy area can be reclaimed. It is to be hoped that if after the proposed community consultation period and if a continuing desire for leaving Site A area for revegetation and quiet contemplation still exists, that MRPV and Council will take note of the wishes of the community and remove the activation additions at that site, or maybe relocate them across Main Road. Site Area A should have a minimal human footprint to enable it to be a project of restoration. The path with a couple of seats would enable a place of quiet contemplation and education, with modest, appropriate signing naming plants, especially those that figured as important and useful to local Aboriginal people. Creating a new entrance could be modest and just use vegetation in a way that future generations would understand that this community was caring for the land and the environment. People move through gateways, not use them for activities. Environmental values should be paramount in the project of renewal. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Spot on time. And unfortunately, we can't ask you any questions as you're speaking on behalf of someone else, but thank you for your submission.
But I think Councillor Perkins may have a question outside this one.
The history of the site?
Well, through the chair, might be appropriate for you to ask that question.
I didn't think I could ask any questions. Jim, do you have a potted history of the flower selling site?
The flower seller's site was originally part of, it goes back to very early tea rooms, offering hot water for picnics. And then it became well known as Ansell and Muir for their chickens, great chickens that they sold for many, many years. And also the site, the area on the eastern side of the cafe was in fact at different times, different purposes. At one stage, Don Brown, the local artist, had an art gallery there, and also Carolyn Richardson established a very large business selling pub mirrors there. That's going back 30 or 40 years. Eventually, their buildings were demolished by Melbourne and Metropolitan Border Works because it is part of a flood zone. And I think under the Shire of Eltham, initially there was a lease there for flower sellers to use that. The area itself is not used for parking. It's mainly for retailing of flowers. The parking is actually on the sealed entranceway that was originally a part of a bus stop and part of Ansell and Muir's.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. All right, and the final speaker is Sue Ormerod on behalf of the Friends of Eltham Lower Park. Do you want to press, is your little microphone on, green light on? Great, you've got 3 minutes. So.
This project involves a complex mix of interested parties, and it's been very heartening to see the collaboration here. We found the published plans rather difficult to read. It would be very useful for the community to have enlargements on public view at Council's offices and the Eltham Library. A3 or A2, please. The concept plan does not show topography, and the land at Site A is varied with surprising troughs and peaks. In fact, there's quite a precipice above the Diamond Creek at one point. Indigenous vegetation along the top and slopes of the creek will stabilise the banks and slow erosion, whereas building a viewing platform and using the heavy machinery needed for its construction would be expensive and could be destabilising. I see that that's been removed. The viewing platform's been removed from the landscape plan. We also note the fence along the front of the vegetation area is in the master plan, and we wouldn't accept that as being an appropriate place for the fence. We suggest that Council rather put future funds towards extending revegetation of Site A towards the bridge over the Diamond Creek, and also perhaps making a more substantial rock barrier with Indigenous planting at the eastern end of Eltham Lower Park's new front car park. Although hazardous tree removal is listed at items 7 and 13 under subjects for discussion, it is not clear which trees are to be removed. There are certainly some dead radiata pine trees close to the footpath along Main Road, and some of the cypress trees look in need of pruning to help them survive a few more years until new Alocasia littoralis shea trees grow and take their place as a new link to Eltham's past. We are looking forward to a revitalised, revegetated gateway that is significant for its natural informal landscaping, with an emphasis on soft rather than hard landscaping. If there is a suitable location for a rain garden on Site A, it's difficult to judge without a topographical plan, that would be good. Reuse of timber from hazardous tree removal for boardwalks where it's boggy is a great idea, but a spiral edible garden seems contrived and would need ongoing maintenance. We strongly suggest looser, more naturalistic planting. There may not be many Indigenous edible plants which would thrive in this location, and it would be best to intermingle those with other plants and label them. In reference to hard landscaping at Site A, the community survey of 2021 showed 45% of respondents were in favour of seats with backs, which make them more accessible for the less mobile, rather than 30% in favour of bench seating. It's difficult to see whether this is reflected in the plan. The survey results also showed people wanted seats for resting, 87% of them, rather than for gathering. It would be more in keeping with our naturalistic look to go for casual seating along a wandering path rather than a gathering space at Site A. We look forward to taking part in further community consultation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sue. And again, we can't ask any questions of Sue, I don't think, as she's representing the Friends of Eltham Lower Park. So at that point, I will ask, do we have a mover for the recommendation? Mayor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. This is a wordy motion, but I will read it due to the changes that Councillor Payne mentioned earlier. That the committee, acting under delegation from Council, 1, notes Major Roads Projects Victoria, or MRPV, are contributing funding to revitalise underutilised public land along Main Road, Eltham, between Faulkner Street and the Diamond Creek Bridge, to recreate a southern gateway to Nillumbik as part of the Legacy initiative following the state government's Fitzsimmons Lane upgrade, known as the Eltham Gateway Concept. 2, supports a collaboration with MRPV to deliver the Eltham Gateway Concept. 3, notes that attachments 1 and 2 in report PCC.027/22 will be replaced with a single plan amended attachment 1, which has been revised to remove the viewing platform and add additional tree planting on the southern side of the road. 4, endorses the amended attachment 1 for the purposes of receiving community feedback for exhibition on Participate Nillumbik for a period of 3 weeks. 5, notes that following community consultation, the plan will be delivered in stages subject to funding. 6, considers public submissions at a future planning and consultation committee meeting. 7, requests the Director of Operations and Infrastructure to work with the relevant landowners, and in brackets we've got Melbourne Water, Department of Transport and Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning to seek approval for the delivery of the concept on their land. And 8, requests the Mayor to write to MRPV to thank them for their funding and support for this community outcome.
Thank you, Mayor Eyre. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Duffy. Mayor Eyre, would you like to speak to this?
I certainly would. Thank you, Chair. So this amended motion is about combining attachments 1 and 2. It is now in colour and removes the viewing platform and adds a cluster of trees to balance the gateway effect. This amendment makes it clearer and easier for community to view the plans and give feedback. And we know that the changes made to Fitzsimmons Lane roundabout caused distress to many of our residents. So this project is an outcome of passionate community advocacy led by the Southern Gateway Renewal Group. It's a collaboration between community, council and Victorian government. And a stakeholder group for the project consists of MRPV, Southern Gateway Renewal Group, Vicky Ward MP and of course Nillumbik Shire Council. And I'd like to thank all stakeholders on this group for the work that they will undertake going forward on this project. The project will enhance our green spaces on both sides of Main Road as you come into Eltham, revitalising one of the key gateways into the Shire. It will involve landscaping and revegetation with Indigenous species as well as new pathways and seating. And a really exciting part is a key component, which is the public artwork that acknowledges the traditional owners. This community-led project is only as relevant as the input as it receives from community. So it's vital that as many people in our community have their say. So it's important that what work we want to see here is reflective of what our community wants. So I really encourage everyone to go to Participate Nillumbik and view the plans and share your feedback. I won't speak much longer as I know Jeff will like to say a few words on this as well. But to finish, this is one of the key gateways into Eltham and the Greenwed Shire of Nillumbik for both those who live here and those who visit. So it's an important symbol of everything we love about where we live. So thanks to all involved and particularly for MRPV, and that's all I'll need to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Eyre. Councillor Duffy, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I remember last February when the chainsaws were in the roundabout, and I remember the people of Eltham who were protesting at the time. And I remember going through the roundabout that day. I was on my way into the doctor's, and I had a sense of it's going to be okay. I was having a mastectomy the following day, and it was meeting my doctor for some pre-treatment. And I thought, just as the limbs were being chopped down off the trees, I'm thinking it's going to be okay because we can just plant more trees. And that's what this group has done. They've worked with, the community has worked with our local MP, and Vicky Ward has been very much a driver of this as well in getting a great outcome through MRVP constructing the road so that there are, I think it's like for every one tree that's being removed from this project, there are 6 trees being planted. And so this is a whole additional element to this road redesign, and it's going to be okay, it's going to be great. And, you know, having the community come together to put something wonderful back to help soften the bitumen and the lights will make a big difference. So it's great that there's an opportunity for the community to do this, and if the state government were not willing to do this, we wouldn't be having any of this conversation right now. So I'd like to thank MRVP and Vicky Ward for the work that they've done, the community and council for the work that they've done, and just step us back a couple of items in our agenda tonight. We were talking about arts and culture, and in the arts and culture strategy, in the plan, in the goal 1, it talks about a stronger connection with Wurundjeri culture and heritage. There's another component which talks about collaborate with our Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Aboriginal Corporation and local First Nations people to share truth-telling stories with the wider community. And another goal in our arts and culture strategy was to champion art in everyday life. This Gateway Renewal project is doing that. It's enabling us to champion art through plants and a greenery. Art can be living in that sense through landscaping. There's art through more traditional means, so whether that becomes murals and signage with interpretive signage, or whether it becomes some of the chainsaw woodwork art plans that we see attached to the concepts. So essentially this is a really positive thing. And so whilst there could be some argy-bargy about what's in and what's out, I think that this is one of the great outcomes for this location. And it takes me back to 4 years ago, or maybe actually a little bit more, when the community was looking at saving community reserves. And I remember talking to an old gentleman, and he was saying, I remember this sense of coming home. And he talked about driving down Lower Plenty Road and going over the Plenty River, and the temperature change that would happen, and the trees that were there. And, you know, none of us get that sense now, because that road is not what it used to be. It's not a single lane road in the way that we've got the Eltham Bridge and our gateway. So we can protect what we have and make it great. And, you know, I really like the acknowledgement to the Wurundjeri in being the original owners of this land. And I think that's the most important legacy here. Not, you know, who's been the recent occupiers of the space, but how we can champion truth-telling and acknowledgement of Wurundjeri in making sure that this place and space becomes something wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Any other councillors like to speak at this point? Councillor Perkins.
Look, just quickly, really like to support the motion and to get some plans out to community to have, you know, that opportunity to listen to community. I'm sure these plans will change, and I'm sure what we'll see as a result of consultation will be quite different to what we're seeing now. But this certainly gets things started. And as I indicated in my question, what I'd like to see is perhaps for that triangle of land, which is 573 Main Road. That's where the florist currently is, and you know, I've no issue with the florist being there for an extended period of time. I wouldn't like them to sort of think we're trying to cut short their lease or in any way get in the way of their lease being renewed. But it'd be great to get cooperation from the leaseholder there to revegetate at least grass that area, and for the plans to show that it's a parking area. You know, I think that should be discouraged. The land is currently zoned public use zone, Schedule 1. So that being the whole of that triangle of B, it's all public use zone. And it doesn't look to have been improved much since those buildings that were destroyed or torn down, as Jim Connor informed us of. So I think now's a great opportunity to rather than we look at the plan and there's an area that looks like potentially a roadway. Well, it's not a roadway. It's land in the middle of this master plan that could also benefit from some revegetation. And even if that's simply grass, not suggesting we want to do anything, but perhaps support that rainforest business. But I'd certainly like to see that area included in the master plan and not left blank as it currently is. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors like to speak at this point? Councillor Ramtran.
Look, just briefly, I think it's really worth noting how such a wonderful thing can come out of something as terrible as having those trees destroyed last year. I know it was heartbreaking for a lot of people in the community, including myself, to see those trees come down and to see the huge changes at that intersection. It was incredibly upsetting. And while nothing can replace those trees, nothing can really completely replace what was lost when that project was done. What we've got here is a really positive contribution from the state government and an acknowledgement that the community really did lose something valuable when those roadworks went through. As necessary as it was to relieve the traffic problems there, the community did lose something special. And what we've got here is really an acknowledgement from the state government that that was valuable and that it's worth not replacing but making up for it. And that's what this is. It's a really, really positive thing to do. And I'm really grateful to MRPV for taking this step and for supporting us in this. It looks like, I think we've got some really good designs here, and it looks like a lot of work's been put into them, but we've certainly heard from community members tonight that there's still a little bit of work to do, and maybe the design brief wasn't entirely clear when this first draft was drawn, but I really think through further community feedback and consultation we'll be able to redesign this into something that the community can be really, really proud of, and hopefully going forwards in future when this project's finished, we'll be able to look at that gateway and say that it feels like home once again. It might have changed, but it still feels like home.
Thank you, Councillor Ramtran. Any other councillors happy to speak? All right, at this stage, I would like to speak, and to do that, I have to stand. I've been accused of being wooden before, but never a standing chair. So I just wanted to say this is a great example of a collaboration between the state government, MRPG, the Southern Gateway Renewal Group, and Vicky Ward, who listened to the group and approached MRPV and all the contractors to say, what can we do? It's a tribute to council officers, particularly Yelmo Phillip and, of course, Rowena Cairns, who has the glorious task of rounding all the different cats into one room at the same time over Zoom, week after week, and to make these plans come to life. I would like to thank those who put the plans together. They were briefed by a group of people who said, we want something, pretty, beautiful. And it's really hard to put something on paper initially with that sort of brief. And they have come up with a design, and I respect them for doing that. The design may change, but that's the point. Someone has to put this down and put this out for public consultation. That's what we're doing. So I just wanted to reiterate, please do go to Participate in Nillumbik, click on the Southern Gateway or the Gateway sign, zoom in because it's a complex plan and you need to keep zooming in to make sure you can read all those fine details, and I'm sure that we will have hard copy plans here at Council for people to have a look at. And I just wanted to thank everyone for the good faith they have shown. What had been a very adversarial group of people is in fact a very tight group and respectful and acting in good faith. And I think that's a tribute to everyone involved. So thank you very much. I will now put this motion to a vote. All in favour? That motion is carried unanimously. We do not have any supplementary or urgent business, and we have no confidential reports, so thank you everyone. That concludes the meeting for tonight. I declare the meeting closed at 8:21 p.m. Thank you so much.